The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the human delegation entered. 300 cycles had passed since the Zithran Dominion had claimed victory over Earth, broadcasting their triumph across every known system. The war had been swift and brutal and decisive. Humanity's homeworld had been reduced to rubble, its population scattered among a dozen colony worlds, leaderless and broken. Or so the Council believed. Admiral Kate Morrison led the human delegation, her boots clicking against the crystalline floor with measured precision. Behind her walked Commander Ryan Blake, his face expressionless, and Lieutenant Sophie Grant, who carried a datasphere that glowed with an eerie amber light. The three humans wore simple gray uniforms bearing no insignia of rank or nation. They looked like refugees. The Zithran representative Supreme Commander Vakthar chittered with amusement from his elevated platform. His exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber's bioluminescent lighting, and his compound eyes fixed on Kate with something resembling contempt. "The defeated come to plead," Vakthar announced, his translator rendering his clicks into standard galactic. "How generous of the Council to grant you this audience, humans. Have you come to beg for your colony worlds to be spared or to negotiate terms of your permanent subjugation?" Kate stopped in the center of the chamber. She did not bow. She did not avert her eyes from the 18 species represented in the Council. Instead, she smiled, a thin expression that never reached her eyes. "We have come to deliver a message," Kate said softly. Her voice carried through the chamber despite its gentle tone, "and to offer the Council one chance to correct a grave mistake." The Valerian ambassador, a gaseous being contained within a pressure suit, pulsed with concern. "Admiral Morrison, your position is clear. Earth has fallen. Your military has been scattered. Your government dissolved. What message could you possibly bring that would interest this Council?" Sophie stepped forward and placed the datasphere on the central podium. It began to project images into the air, star charts and fleet movements and colony coordinates. But what made the Council members shift uncomfortably in their seats were the timestamps, all within the last 10 cycles. "You conquered Earth," Kate said, her whisper somehow filling the vast chamber. "You took our home. You killed our leaders. You thought you had broken humanity." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "But you made one critical miscalculation." Ryan spoke now, his voice devoid of emotion. "You assumed Earth was the heart of humanity. You were wrong. Earth was simply where we were born. Humanity's heart beats wherever humans draw breath." The projections shifted, showing massive fleet formations, hundreds of ships all bearing the mark of something new. The Terran Collective, not the old Earth government, not the fractured colony administrations, but something united and something forged in the fires of loss. "For 300 cycles you believed us scattered and weak," Kate continued. "We let you believe that. We needed time. Time to grieve, time to adapt, and time to remember what our species does best." Her smile vanished. "Survival through evolution." Vakthar rose from his seat, mandibles clicking in agitation. "This is meaningless posturing. You display ships you do not have, strength you cannot possess. The Council sees through this deception." "Do you?" Sophie asked quietly. She manipulated the datasphere and new images appeared. Zithran supply lines cut. Dominion outposts dark and silent. 3 minor species that had allied with the Zithran conquest, now requesting human aid against their former partners. "For 300 cycles we have been watching and learning and moving," Kate said. "We studied every species in this Council. We know your weaknesses, your supply lines, your political structures. We know which of you helped the Zithrans conquer Earth." Her gaze swept across the chamber and several ambassadors visibly flinched. "And we know which of you simply watched it happen." The chamber erupted in protests and demands for explanation. The Valerian ambassador called for order, but Kate simply stood waiting, that same cold smile returning to her face. Finally, when silence fell once more, she spoke again. "We did not come here to threaten. We came to inform. The humans you knew, the compassionate diplomats who begged for peace, who offered aid to any species in need, who built hospitals on 100 worlds are dead. They died with Earth." Kate's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, yet every being in the chamber heard her clearly. "What stands before you now is what you created. We are what becomes of a peaceful species when you take everything from them." She turned to leave, Ryan and Sophie falling into step behind her. But at the doorway, Kate paused and looked back at the Council one final time. "You have 30 cycles to return control of Earth's orbit and issue a formal apology. If you refuse, you will learn the difference between humans at peace and humans at war. And I promise you, council members, you will not enjoy the lesson." The three humans departed, leaving the council chamber in chaos. In the silence that followed their exit, only Vakthar seemed unworried. He chittered his laughter once more. "Empty threats from a broken species," he declared. "They have nothing." But the Valerian ambassador, who had studied humans longer than any other species present, pulsed a deep, fearful crimson. He had seen something in Kate Morrison's eyes that terrified him beyond measure. Not rage, not hatred, not even determination. He had seen patience. The kind of patience that came from a species that had already decided its course of action and was simply waiting for the right moment to execute it. The kind of patience that hunters possessed when they watched their prey walk into carefully laid traps. The Valerian thought back to the human histories he had studied, during better times when Earth had been a center of art and culture and learning. He remembered reading about their wars, about how they fought when cornered, about what they became when pushed beyond their breaking point. One passage from an ancient human text came to mind, something written by a warrior philosopher thousands of years ago. "Beware the fury of a patient man." Kate Morrison and her delegation had been very patient indeed. The Zytheran supply convoy moved through the Helios corridor with practiced efficiency. 17 cargo vessels surrounded by 32 warships, all heavily armed, and all confident in their superiority. They had traveled this route 100 times since the conquest of Earth, delivering supplies to the occupying forces that maintained control over the Sol system. None of them noticed the debris field shift. Captain Danny Price watched from the command deck of the Revenant, a human stealth vessel that technically did not exist according to any official records. His ship was one of 50 Ghost-class vessels built in secret facilities scattered across the outer colonies, designed with one purpose: to make humanity's enemies paranoid. "Weapons locked," reported Lieutenant Holly Grant. "All pods ready for deployment." Danny nodded. "Remember, we are not here to destroy them. We are here to make them afraid." The debris field was actually a network of human-built sensor drones and weapons platforms, all disguised as destroyed ship parts and asteroids. The Terran Collective had spent 2 years seeding the major trade routes with them, invisible to conventional scans and waiting for the moment when they would be activated. That moment was now. The first Zytheran vessel exploded without warning, its shields failing catastrophically as human-designed electromagnetic pulse weapons overloaded every system simultaneously. The convoy scattered, warships moving to protect the cargo vessels and scanning frantically for the source of the attack. They found nothing. 3 more ships went dark, their systems fried and life support failing. The Zytheran commander broadcast on all frequencies, demanding to know who was attacking them. Danny opened a channel, his face appearing on every Zytheran screen. He wore no uniform, just a simple gray jumpsuit. Behind him, the bridge of the Revenant showed only shadows and dim lighting. "Good evening," Danny said pleasantly. "Or whatever time it is in your cycle. We apologize for the interruption, but we wanted to deliver a message from the Terran Collective." The Zytheran commander chittered angrily. "Show yourself, human coward. Face us in honorable combat." Danny's smile was cold. "Honor. That is an interesting word coming from a species that used biological weapons on civilian populations. But we are not here to debate morality. We are here to explain how your existence is going to change." He gestured, and the Revenant decloaked for exactly 3 seconds, appearing on every sensor in the convoy, long enough for them to see it and to target it, but not long enough for their weapons to lock on. Then it vanished again. "That was one ship," Danny continued. "We have 200 more just like it, each one capable of staying hidden for months, each one carrying enough firepower to cripple a dozen vessels before you even know we are there." He leaned forward. "Starting today, every Zytheran ship leaving port will wonder if we are following. Every cargo run will be a gamble. Every patrol will end with your crews jumping at shadows. We will hunt you down," the Zytheran commander snarled. "We will find your hiding places and burn them." "You are welcome to try," Danny replied. "But while you are searching for us, ask yourself this question. If we can hit you here in one of your most protected corridors, where else can we reach?" He paused. "Can we reach your supply depots or your shipyards or your colony worlds?" The Zytheran said nothing. 8 cycles ago, your mining facility on Carrick went offline for 6 hours. You blamed it on equipment failure. It was not. Danny's voice remained conversational, almost friendly. 19 cycles ago, 3 of your admirals got violently ill at a diplomatic function. Food poisoning, you said. It was not. His smile widened. And 7 cycles ago, your Supreme Commander's personal shuttle suffered a navigation error that nearly sent him into a star. Pilot error according to the official report. Want to guess what it really was? Silence filled the channel. We are everywhere, Danny said softly. We are in your systems, your networks, and your supply chains. We are the dock worker who loads your ships, the technician who repairs your stations, and the pilot who flies your transports. We are invisible because you never bothered to see us as a threat. You saw us as defeated. Holly spoke up from her station. Sir, they are powering weapons. Good, Danny said, still speaking to the Zitherans. Fire if you want. You might even hit something. But understand this. Every shot you take reveals your position. Every scan you activate tells us where you are. You are not hunters anymore. You are prey. The channel closed. Danny turned to his crew. All units execute scatter pattern Omega. Make sure at least 6 of them see a ship before we fully cloak. I want them reporting ghost sightings for weeks. The Revenant and its sister ships flickered in and out of sensor range, appearing in random locations around the convoy, and never staying visible long enough to be targeted. The Zitharan warships fired blindly, their weapons hitting nothing but empty space. When the human ships finally departed, they left the convoy intact but terrified. 17 cargo vessels and 32 warships, all operational, but with crews who would never feel safe again. Across the galaxy, similar operations were unfolding. Human operatives were sabotaging supply lines, releasing information about Zitharan war crimes and offering aid to species oppressed by the Dominion. The message was clear and consistent. Humanity was no longer asking for mercy. They were demonstrating power. On the Zitharan homeworld, Supreme Commander Vakthar received reports of dozens of such incidents. Ghost ships appearing and vanishing, critical systems failing at impossible moments, rumors spreading among the conquered species that humanity was returning, stronger and more dangerous than before. He dismissed most of it as coincidence and human desperation, but in the privacy of his chamber, Vakthar found himself checking his own security systems 3 times before sleeping. Somewhere, in the darkness between stars, Danny Price reviewed the mission reports from 50 other Ghost-class vessels. All successful, all terrifying, all sending the same message to the galaxy. The humans were no longer the species you remembered. He opened a secure channel to Admiral Kate Morrison. Ma'am, the psychological operation is proceeding as planned. They are scared. Kate's voice came through calm and measured. Good. Fear is the beginning. Next comes paranoia. Then mistakes. And then, Captain Price, comes our real demonstration of what we have become. And if the Council does not respond to our deadline. Kate was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made Danny's blood run cold. Then we moved to Phase 2. And we show them that compassion was never our only virtue. We also excel at justice. The Galactic Council had not slept well in 29 cycles. Ambassador Kelvin Rogers sat in the human delegation's temporary quarters on Station Unity, watching the news feeds from across the galaxy. Every major network was covering the same stories: mysterious attacks on Zitharan assets, supply lines failing, and whispers of human operatives embedded in every major government. He was joined by his diplomatic attaché, Michelle Torres, who was compiling reports with grim efficiency. The Praxian Collective has formally requested a meeting, Michelle said, not looking up from her datapad. They want to discuss human protection for their merchant fleets. The Zitharans have been harassing their ships, and apparently word has spread that human vessels intervened in 3 separate incidents last week. Kelvin nodded. And the Draken Sovereignty, still publicly supporting the Zitharans, but their intelligence minister, sent us an encrypted message asking for information about Ghost-class vessel specifications. Michelle finally looked up, allowing herself a small smile. I think they want to make sure we are not following their ships, too. A chime at the door interrupted them. Kelvin opened it to find Ambassador Thelvas, the Valerian representative, hovering in his containment suit. The gaseous being pulsed a cautious blue-green. Ambassador Rogers, I need to speak with you privately. Kelvin gestured Michelle out and sealed the door. What can I do for you, Thelvas? You can tell me the truth. The Valerian's color shifted to deep purple, indicating serious concern. How much of what Admiral Morrison said was real and how much was human posturing? Kelvin moved to the viewport, staring out at the starfield. Does it matter? The effect is the same either way. It matters to me. I argued for intervention when the Zitharans attacked Earth. I was outvoted. I watched your world burn from this very station, and I carry that guilt every cycle. Thelvis drifted closer. Now I watch the council tear itself apart trying to decide if you are genuinely dangerous or just very good at bluffing. And I need to know which it is because I am being asked to vote tomorrow. Vote on what? On whether to meet your demands or to authorize a preemptive strike against all known human colonies. Thelvis's color flared red with distress. Vokthar has convinced half the council that you are a threat that must be eliminated before you grow stronger. He is calling for total eradication of your species. Kelvin turned, his expression carefully neutral. And how do you plan to vote? That depends on your answer. If this is a bluff, if you are exaggerating your capabilities to buy time, then I can argue for diplomacy. But if you truly have become what Morrison suggested, if you are genuinely prepared to wage a war of terror across the galaxy, Thelvis trailed off. Then I do not know what to do. Because the humans I knew would never have done the things I have been hearing about. The humans you knew died with Earth, Kelvin said quietly. Morrison was not exaggerating about that, so it is true, all of it. Kelvin considered his next words carefully. The truth was complicated. Yes, humanity had been building ships and training operatives and preparing for this moment, but they had also been exaggerating their numbers, using psychological warfare to make 50 ships seem like 500, and creating the illusion of omnipresence with careful timing and misdirection. But Thelvis did not need to know that. Let me tell you a story about humans, Kelvin said. 350 years ago on Earth, there was a nation that was attacked without warning. Their primary military base was destroyed in a single morning. Thousands died. The attackers thought they had crippled this nation, made it unable to respond. What happened? Within 4 years, that nation had built an entirely new fleet, developed weapons unlike anything seen before, and defeated its attacker so thoroughly that it changed the course of human history. Kelvin met Thelvis's optical sensors directly, and that was when we were confined to a single planet. What do you think we can do with the resources of a dozen colony worlds and 300 cycles of preparation? The Valerian pulsed through several colors rapidly, processing this information. You are saying Morrison was telling the truth. I am saying that humanity's greatest strength has never been our compassion, though we did value it. Our greatest strength is adaptation. You changed the rules on us. You showed us that kindness was weakness in galactic politics. Kelvin's voice hardened. So we adapted. We learned to play by your rules. And now you are discovering that you do not like the game anymore. This is madness. If the Council authorizes a strike against your colonies, you will retaliate. The galaxy will be torn apart by war. Yes, Kelvin agreed. It will, and in that war, humanity will probably lose. You outnumber us, outgun us, and have more resources. He paused. But we will take a lot of you down with us, and we will make sure the galaxy remembers which species started this. Which species chose genocide over diplomacy? Thelvis was silent for a long moment, his colors shifting through patterns that Kelvin had learned indicated deep thought. What do you want from me, Ambassador Rogers? Vote against the strike. Convince the Council to accept our terms. Return control of Earth's orbit to us and issue a formal apology. Kelvin softened his tone. That is all we have ever wanted, Thelvis. Recognition, an admission that what happened to us was wrong. And if we do this, if the Council agrees, then we return to diplomacy. We open negotiations for fair trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and cultural exchanges. We go back to being the humans you remember. Kelvin met the Valerian's gaze. But if you choose the other path, if you vote for our destruction, then you will get exactly what you fear. You will get humans with nothing left to lose. After Thelvis departed, Michelle returned to the quarters. She had clearly been listening at the door. Was any of that true, sir? The story about the ancient nation. Completely true. Happened on Earth in 1941. The nation was the United States and the attackers were the Empire of Japan. Kelvin smiled grimly. And 4 years later, the United States ended the war with weapons that made even them horrified at what they had created. Nuclear weapons, Michelle said softly, among other things. Kelvin returned to the viewport. We humans have always been good at two things, Michelle: building beautiful civilizations and utterly destroying those who threaten them. The galaxy pushed us from one to the other. Now they get to decide if we stay there. The next day, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The vote was close, 9-8 with one abstention, but it was enough. The Council agreed to humanity's demands. Fokthar stormed from the chamber, chittering threats and promises of revenge. But he was alone. Even his closest allies had abandoned him, unwilling to risk a war they could not predict or control. Captain Lisa Hayes stood in the observation dome of the orbital station above Earth, watching the planet slowly heal. 18 months had passed since the Council had returned control of the Sol system to humanity. 18 months of the hardest work humans had ever undertaken. Earth was barely recognizable from orbit. The Zitharan occupation had left scars visible from space. Massive craters where cities once stood, dead zones where bioweapons had scorched the ground, and oceans clouded with pollution from destroyed infrastructure. The planet that had birthed humanity looked like a corpse, but it was healing. Lisa could see the green spreading through the brown wastelands, forests being replanted by massive terraforming arrays. The oceans were clearing as biological remediation ships worked night and day to filter out toxins. And in orbit, the construction yards were building not warships, but habitats and hospitals and research stations. "Penny for your thoughts, Captain." Commander Peter Grant approached with 2 cups of coffee. Lisa accepted one gratefully. "Just thinking about how different this is from what I expected," she admitted. "When Morrison said Phase 2 was teaching the galaxy a better lesson, I thought she meant showing them we could be merciful in victory. I did not think she meant this." Peter followed her gaze to the planet below. Neither did anyone else. "I think that was the point." They were interrupted by an alert from the communication station. Lisa moved to answer it and found herself looking at the face of Ambassador Kelvin Rogers calling from Station Unity. "Captain Hayes, the delegation from the Keltharian Republic has arrived. They are requesting permission to tour the reconstruction sites as discussed. Grant them access to Zones 3, 7, and 12. Lisa replied. "Full transparency protocols. Let them see everything." After signing off, Peter raised an eyebrow. "The Keltharians, were they not the ones who provided the Zitharans with intelligence about our colony defenses?" "They were," Lisa confirmed. "That is exactly why Morrison wants them to see this." The Keltharian delegation arrived 3 hours later. They were an insectoid species, smaller than Zitharans but with similar exoskeletal structures. Their ambassador, an elder named Clix, moved through the orbital station with obvious nervousness. Lisa met them in the docking bay personally. "Ambassador Clix, welcome to New Genesis Station. Thank you for accepting our invitation." Clix's antennae twitched. "Captain Hayes, I will be honest. My government sent me here to assess your military capabilities, to determine if you remain a threat now that you have reclaimed your homeworld." "I know," Lisa said simply. "That is fine. Come, let me show you what we are building." She led them through the station, making no effort to hide anything. The Keltharians saw the construction bays building hospital ships and medical frigates. They saw the training facilities where human doctors and engineers were learning new techniques for planetary reconstruction. They saw the vast storage bays filled with supplies, not weapons, but food and medicine and building materials. "I do not understand," Click said finally. "Where are your warships, your weapon forges? You have reclaimed a system you fought for, yet you build this." "We are building what we always should have been building," Lisa replied. "Come, there is more to see." She took them down to Earth in a shuttle, landing at what had once been the ruins of Tokyo. The city was still devastated, but among the rubble, thousands of workers were clearing debris, laying new foundations and planting gardens in carefully prepared soil. But what made the Keltharians pause was the composition of the workforce. "Those are Zitharan soldiers," Click said, his translator carrying his shock. "The ones who occupied your world. Why have you not imprisoned them or executed them?" "Because we learned something during our 300 cycles of exile," Lisa said. "We learned the difference between soldiers and governments. These Zitharans were following orders just like our soldiers were. When we offered them a choice between trial for war crimes or working on the reconstruction, most chose to help rebuild what they had helped destroy." She pointed to a particularly large work crew. At its center was a massive Zitharan in work armor, directing other workers in clearing a collapsed building. "That is Commander Krovek. He was the military governor of North America during the occupation. He is personally responsible for the deaths of approximately 50,000 humans. And you let him live." "We let him work," Lisa corrected. "For the next 30 years, he and his soldiers will help rebuild Earth. They will see the results of their actions every day. They will learn the names of the people who died and understand what they destroyed. And maybe when they return to their own worlds, they will carry that lesson with them." Clix was silent as they toured the reconstruction sites. They saw humans and Zitherans working side by side, former enemies united in the singular goal of healing a wounded world. They saw memorial gardens being planted for the human dead with Zytheran workers carefully tending each tree. They saw schools being rebuilt, hospitals rising from ruins, and a planet slowly coming back to life. At the final site, Lisa brought them to what had been Los Angeles. In the center of the ruins, a massive structure was under construction, a tower of gleaming metal and living wood reaching toward the sky like a prayer. The Unity Spire, Lisa explained. When it is finished, it will be the tallest structure on Earth. A mix of human and alien architecture, incorporating designs from every species in the Council. At its peak will be a museum dedicated to the conquest, showing the truth of what happened here. Nothing hidden, nothing glorified. Just honest history. Why? Clix asked. Why build something honoring all of us when we abandoned you? Because that is the lesson we need to teach, Lisa said softly. The galaxy thinks it learned that might makes right, that compassion is weakness. We need to show them they are wrong, that the strongest act is not conquest or revenge but choosing mercy when you have the power to destroy. She turned to face the Keltharian delegation directly. You came here expecting to see weapons and warships. You expected us to be preparing for revenge. Instead, you found us building hospitals and schools and gardens. Do you know why that is more terrifying to the Zitharan Dominion than any fleet we could construct? Clix's antennae trembled. Because it shows you do not need revenge. You have already won. Exactly. Every ship we do not build, every weapon we do not forge, every Zitharan soldier we rehabilitate instead of execute, it is all a message. It says we are strong enough to choose peace, strong enough to forgive without forgetting, strong enough to teach rather than punish. Lisa smiled. That is the lesson Morrison wanted the galaxy to learn. That true power is not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice not to. The Keltharian delegation departed 3 days later. Their report to their government was succinct. Humanity was not preparing for war. They were preparing for something far more radical and far more dangerous to the existing galactic order. They were preparing for actual peace. 2 years after Earth's return, Supreme Commander Vokthar stood in his war room, staring at reports that made his mandibles twitch with rage. The Zitharan Dominion was crumbling, not from military defeat, not from economic collapse, but from something far more insidious. Hope. 17 species that had been under Zitharan control had negotiated peaceful transitions to independence using human mediators. 32 more were in negotiations. The Dominion's military, once feared across 3 sectors, was reduced to half strength as soldiers deserted to join reconstruction efforts across the galaxy. And it was all humanity's fault. They are destroying us without firing a shot. Vokthar chittered to his remaining advisors. This peace offensive is more devastating than any war could be. His chief strategist, a younger Zitharan named Tekvar, shifted nervously. Supreme Commander, perhaps it is time to consider negotiation. If we approach the Terran Collective. Never. Vokthar's roar echoed through the chamber. We are warriors. We do not surrender to prey species that should have been exterminated. He activated a holographic display showing Earth, now green and thriving. Look at them. Building gardens while we lose entire sectors. They mock us with their weakness. Is it weakness, Supreme Commander? Tekvar asked quietly. Or have they discovered a form of strength we do not understand? Vokthar turned on his subordinate, ready to strike him down for insubordinance. But something in Tekvar's eyes stopped him. It was not fear. It was pity. Get out, Vokthar said. All of you. Leave me. Alone in his war room, the Supreme Commander activated a private channel, one that could not be traced or monitored. On the screen appeared Admiral Kate Morrison, looking tired but satisfied. I have been expecting your call, Kate said. Do not sound so smug, human. You may have won the Council's favor, but I still command the largest fleet in this sector. Actually, you command the 3rd largest, Kate corrected gently. The Valerian Consortium passed you 6 months ago, and the Praxian Collective is about to pass you next quarter. You have lost so many ships to desertion that... Enough. Vokthar's mandibles clicked rapidly. I did not contact you to discuss fleet statistics. I contacted you to offer terms. Kate raised an eyebrow. Terms? I was not aware we were negotiating anything. A duel. Single combat. You and me. If I win, the Terran Collective withdraws all reconstruction efforts and ceases its interference in Dominion affairs. If you win, He paused. The next words difficult to speak. The Dominion formally apologizes for the conquest of Earth and agrees to your peace accords. That is not how this works, Vokthar. This is not a vid drama where the hero and villain fight to determine the fate of nations. Kate leaned forward. And even if it were, I am not interested in fighting you. Because you are afraid, because it would solve nothing. You would lose because you are thinking like a warrior, and this is not a war. And after you lost, your people would reject any agreement made under those circumstances. Kate's expression softened slightly. I have studied your species, Vokthar. You are not evil. You are scared. The Supreme Commander recoiled as if struck. How dare you? You built an empire on strength because you were afraid of appearing weak. You conquered species that might have been allies because you feared they would conquer you first, and now you are watching an entire galactic order shift around you. Based on principles you do not understand and cannot fight with weapons. Kate's voice was gentle but firm. You are terrified, and that terror is destroying everything you built. Vokthar said nothing, his compound eyes fixed on the human admiral. I am going to tell you something about humans, Kate continued. 300 cycles ago I would have been a negotiator, a peace builder. I would have tried to understand your culture, find common ground and build bridges. But when you took Earth, when you killed everyone I knew and loved, something changed in me. You became like us. No. I became something new, something that understands both the value of peace and the cost of maintaining it. She paused. I'm going to make you an offer, Vokthar. Not a negotiation, not a threat. Just an offer. Speak. Surrender your military authority. Step down as Supreme Commander. In exchange, you will be given a colony world in neutral space. Not a prison, not exile, but a genuine second chance. Build something there. Something that is not about conquest or fear. Kate's eyes held his. Prove that the Zitharans can be more than warriors. Be the first of your species to choose a different path, and if I refuse, then in 5 years, maybe 10, the Dominion will collapse completely. Not because we destroyed it, but because everyone around you will have evolved past the need for empires built on fear. You will be left alone, isolated, a remnant of an age the galaxy has moved beyond. Kate leaned back. That is not a threat. It is just reality. Vokthar disconnected the call without responding. For 3 days he isolated himself in his private quarters, wrestling with a choice that should not have been difficult. He was a warrior. Warriors fought until victory or death. Surrender was unthinkable. But Kate's words haunted him. Prove that Zitharans can be more than warriors. On the 4th day he emerged and called an assembly of the Dominion's high command. 50 officers gathered expecting orders for a final offensive against the human colonies. Instead, Vokthar announced his resignation. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some called for his execution as a traitor. Others begged him to reconsider. But Tekvar, the young strategist, stepped forward and did something unprecedented in Zitharan culture. He bowed to his superior. You have shown greater courage today than in 1,000 battles, Supreme Commander, Tekvar said. You have chosen wisdom over pride. Allow me to follow your example. One by one, other officers stepped forward. Not all of them, but enough. They laid down their weapons and pledged to pursue the peace accords with the Terran Collective. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the Zitharan Dominion, the most militaristic empire in known space, voluntarily dissolved itself. 6 months later, Admiral Kate Morrison attended a ceremony on Earth. The Unity Spire was complete, its peak touching the clouds and its base rooted in soil that had been soaked with blood but now grew gardens. At the base of the spire, a memorial was being unveiled. It listed every human who had died in the conquest, every Zitharan who had fallen in combat, and every being from any species who had perished in the conflicts that followed. Vokthar was there, no longer Supreme Commander but simply a Zitharan elder. He stood with a delegation from his people, many of whom were former soldiers now working on reconstruction projects across the galaxy. Kate approached him as the ceremony concluded. They stood together, 2 old warriors looking at a monument to the cost of war. Do you ever regret it? Vokthar asked. Choosing mercy over revenge every day, Kate admitted. There are mornings I wake up and want nothing more than to watch your species burn for what you did to my world. The people I lost, the life I had before, it is all gone because of decisions you made. Then why show mercy? Kate was silent for a long moment, looking up at the spire that represented unity among species who had been enemies. Because someone has to be the first to stop the cycle. Someone has to prove that we can be better than our worst impulses. She turned to face him. And because the people I lost, they believed in something better. They believed in a galaxy where different species could coexist, could learn from each other, and could build something greater than any one civilization could achieve alone. And you are honoring them by making that galaxy real. I am trying. Some days I am more successful than others. Vakthar extended his primary manipulator limb in the human gesture of respect Kate had taught him. She clasped it firmly. Thank you, Admiral Morrison, for teaching us that compassion is not weakness. It is the hardest form of strength.